Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today for our Q&A Zoom meeting, and we're looking at lesson 7. We're going to be taking particular focus on the site cross-section map. So let us take a peek at that. I'm just going to share my screen. We'll be doing a bit of that today, looking at different things, but I guess we should just look at the overview of the assignment to begin with. I'm not sure there's much call to go through the local survey uh, in this call. I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at where are we here? There we are. We'll just get the template file up and we can take a peek. There we go. So the local ecological survey is pretty straightforward. We're looking at a variety of different things. Of course, there are tutorials on each side of the slide here if you need to reference anything like that. And there are a couple of examples here. So there's a good one here with semi-arid desert, and then one here with North Carolina, which hopefully there's a few trees left there. But basically what
Mine
we're...
looks different than that for us. My template looks different too.
Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me go back. I may have an older version here.
Yeah, ours looks more like a succession, yeah, a
Okay.
sort like circle succession.
All righty. Well, we'll
But
take a
that's
look.
okay. We can, I don't know if it really matters.
Yeah, no, that did look a little different to my eye here too.
Yeah, that's not it.
Hmm. Yeah, that is what's linked there. Let me just see if I go back to the beginning of the course. There should be another link. There we go. I can get rid of that.
The examples on the right, that was in as the example in our template, but the
Okay.
template itself has more of a circular
Hmm.
motion of disturbance,
I wonder if they've...
succession planting, and a
This may have been, I don't know why they would update this in midstream, but hmm. Yeah, I don't recall it being like this at all. I yeah, it was more geared towards the soil
yeah.
succession, but we can, that is the important part here, I see, because that's at least listed below. So if your template file is different, that's great. They'll have the similar information, but probably a different layout. So I'm not sure. I can't answer why they've changed that, but it'll be similar but different. So we're still looking at pioneer species and the succession with the soils, and that is a key part of all of this. And I'm not sure why we're doing that. Let us go to Carolina here. That's a little bit better. So this is a really valuable piece to take away, and that is soil succession. And we kind of touched on that in our last Q&A, where we're looking at soil food web and how that ties into what um, holding capacity a soil can have based on the organisms that are occupying that soil. So when we look at these images here, it's much the same thing. When we get to the mature forest, we're looking at a very fungal dominant soil. And when we're looking at these early disturbances, that is, oh, sorry. Oh, I was just trying, there we go. Okay. When we look at these early soils, again, those are going to be more bacterial dominant. So even if we wanted trees to establish in this early succession period, we'd have to provide a lot of support for that to happen. Whereas when we get into more of a mature forest, new trees can establish themselves easily. And for the most part, that has to do with the soil succession itself and the organisms that are currently living in there. And, I'm sure, as you know, with forests, they're quite, you could spend your whole life researching this, but just the whole idea of sharing nutrient between trees, how some larger trees can support smaller ones. It's fascinating process to read about. But a lot of that has to do with
What is she doing?
the soils. So let us take a look here.
There's pencils upstairs in the box.
Oh, there you go. I just muted you, Andrea. Sorry. So if you want to jump in, please don't hesitate. All right. So that's kind of our first slide. We're looking at, what is your region? So here would be old growth coastal temperate rainforest. That'd be pretty much where I live. And then these pioneer species. Now, I'm not sure on your template whether you have pioneer, mid, and late. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I seem to recall just a list of pioneer species, which is fine. And that is what, like when we go out on a job site, particularly a new site, we have our eyes on the ground, and we're trying to look for things like this, especially if there's been recent disturbance. What's the response? What is coming back quickly? And that can vary quite a bit depending on the level of disturbance. If it's just disturbance beside an existing forest, you're going to get a completely different response to, say, a new home that was cleared of all vegetation. Then you're looking, as this example shows, in that very early succession. And it takes a long time to build that soil to get it back up to where it'll support large trees and shrubs. So that in itself is a very valuable tool. If you're dealing with a disturbed site and your plan is to use that existing soil to reestablish plantings, that you've got a few extra steps that are going to be involved with your work there, because you're going to have to support the soil organisms that are there and aren't there. There'll be lots of bacterial, but very little fungal, and it's far easier to go the other direction, of course.
Jamie, is it to show what's in the region or on your site?
On your site.
Yeah, because that's our template. It says found on your site or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that tells you a lot. Like where I live, we're on 5 acres. There's been bracken, there's Himalayan blackberry, there'd be what other things? Bracken is the big one. Even Douglas fir, believe it or not, is a pioneer species. I would never have believed it, but it's true. Alder, what we call arbutus, which I believe in the US is called madrona. Those are all pioneer plants. And again, if you're getting a response of woody pioneer species, you know that the soil, even though it's disturbed, is not perhaps as disturbed as, it's not a blank slate. So it's able to support. I've even got arbutus or madrona coming up on my driveway. And there's forest on both sides of the driveway. So obviously there's all this fungal activity that links under the road, but it's enough support for those little trees to start growing, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, so that is slide number 1. And of course, yours are going to look a little different than that. And then we talked about birds, and this is interesting. Yes, there's a little bit of work to put in here, and how relevant is that with the design itself? Well, it's really good to know your local ecology. I wouldn't necessarily say that if you took on a job for somebody else, you'd be going in and documenting all the birds and the wildlife that they had there, other than as a cursory look. And then your local food chain. So that's an interesting exercise. So those are the main slides, and I think these last two will be similar to what's on your template file. Maybe just the first one here is a little bit different. And then our SWOT analysis, which is the same as we have with other lessons. So, after going through this exercise, what are the strengths and opportunities we see? And then the weaknesses and threats. And certainly the weaknesses could lean towards those early pioneer plants, right? So that may be seeing those pioneer plants, maybe an indication that, you have an early succession going on. And of course, if you have pasture, you're going to have, that's the one interesting part of raising animals and having pasture, is you're really holding that succession in a spot. If you don't cut, let's say, or you don't have animals grazing on that land, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to transition into woody planting pretty quick. You're going to get blackberry or other pioneer. Another one up here is ocean spray or holodiscus. It's a lovely native shrub, and it establishes very quickly. So yeah, there are a number of pioneer plants, and it is good to know those for sure. All right, so I think we kind of covered the local ecological survey. The hardest or bigger part of the assignment is the site cross-section. So let's take a look at some of the examples that we have here. I've got a couple I can show you that we have done. So first of all, we want a plan view, right? So that's just your base plan. That's not too mysterious. And then we're going to do the section view. So we're going to have probably a small image of your base plan and an indication of where your section view is located. And excuse me, one important aspect of this is to have each end of the line designated in some regard. So here there's an A and B. And then you can see on the section drawing itself, there's an A and B. And that just lets us know what side of this line we're observing from, whether it's this side or this side. So we're over here looking at the landscape, and it's literally a cut or a slice across the landscape. So it's very useful when we're planning some proposed work or proposed retaining or changes in the grade, or even in this case, it's giving us a really good idea of how water's going to flow in this area. Now, if I was doing this, what I would suggest to provide a bit more context to this is to have, the barn shown in the back, and that could be in a grade. It could be grayed out to sort of indicate that it's background. Because you can see right here, there's a couple of buildings. So that would be, certainly worth including in it to give it a bit of context. But yeah, so you may think, well, how are we going to get there? And I'll certainly show you that. I'm not sure why that's an example. That was just a balcony. Occasionally we have students that have very, very small spaces, and I have had a student with a balcony before. It's not too exciting for them when we get to this exercise, because there's not a lot you can do with that. But yeah, that's a good example. Let me just show you a couple of others here. Now, we provide section drawings occasionally. And this is one we did years ago. This is not a section drawing here, but this is a design package we did for a commercial property. So we won't bore you with that. This is our section drawing. And one of the reasons we don't do these very often is this is more the sort of thing we'll do. We'll do more of a 3D perspective view, which tells us a lot more about the site versus this. But in commercial design work, this is a normal requirement. They want to see how the site is going to look, in particular from a roadway. So if we go back here, we have our section is going to go all the way up this road here. And you'll notice this is different than what you're being asked to do, right? But similar but different. So we're trying to project how this proposed development, which, just to let you know, is basically, it's all of that. That's proposed, and this is existing. So fortunately for us, our software will do this for us, and we don't have to go through the trouble doing it manually. Although, when computers do things, it's not always straightforward. But in this case, it gives the powers that be an idea of how this would look from the road. And then there's all these other documents in here. This is another, they want views, right? So gave them different views. This is coming in off the road. So we can only do this because our software allows us to build 3D. There's a 3D component to it if we choose to do that. And you pretty much have to start that way when you're doing a design, if you're going to want to do that. So yeah, there's all these sort of views, but the main thing that we're trying to do here today is the section view. So if we cut into the landscape up the road, this is what the development will look like. And of course, they want to know that because this is quite a large commercial building here, and they want a feel of how that's going to be impacting people that are driving by, as well as from the existing homes there. Yeah, so let's see. You'll notice I have a scale. I don't have anything else on here, and there's no labeling, right? So we are asking, you guys to label it and to provide a scale. But this again is a little bit different context. So if we go back, to this, you know, it's simpler, right? But you can see between the image I showed you and this, really the only difference is graphics, right? How good you can make the graphics. The information, there's a tree here, the tree here, whether it looks realistic or not is just really graphical. And that's something that takes quite a long time to improve. If you're designing, you'll see that. You're always trying to make this better and more legible. Okay, so if you want, let's say we are doing a section drawing and we want to use Google Earth. Let's take a look at how we might do that. I will just go. I have a lot of squares here. These are just actually for my wife and myself. We're trying to visualize how large acreage is because we're eventually looking to move and we want to get 300 or 400 acres, probably in eastern Canada, and we want to give ourselves an idea of what that feels like. And of course we live here, so we have a pretty good idea of this scale, what that would feel like. But we're looking at section drawing here. So let's say that this is our project site right here. Yeah, we'll just say this is our site and that's our boundary, and it's going to disappear on me. So what we do when we're in Google Earth, and of course, being Google Earth, this is not the most accurate way of doing a section drawing, but you can do it this way. So what you do is you're going to create a path, which is up on right here on the menu. And I don't think you can see can you see the pop-up that's appeared on the screen here? Probably not, eh? Okay, well, I'm going to close that. And I'm just going to reshare so you can see the whole desktop. I think that's right. Yep. Okay. So if we go up here and we have a path tool, then we're asked to name it, and you don't have to do that. The only thing we have to do is draw a line and figure out where we want to do the section. So let's say in this case, we want to start here and go the length of the property. Now, if you don't like that, we can certainly move it around. Maybe we go corner to corner, wherever works for you, wherever you think is going to give you the most amount of information that's relevant. And then all you have to do is say, okay, you're done. And it will be shown on the left here under places, right? So we're going to right click that and we'll go down to show elevation profile. And then all of a sudden, it's going to give us, we can change this view here. It's going to give us on the bottom, basically all that elevation data that we need to know. And you'll notice at the top that arrow is moving in conjunction with the bottom. So as we go through the site, it's dropping off here towards the road and rises up right around where the house is. and then drops a little bit to the other road. So you could take this and take a screenshot of this lower profile and just trace over it. Right? So that's pretty easy. It's just not going to be horribly accurate, and it's not something that I would do professionally. I wouldn't be using Google Earth for anything other than rough communication with clients. I don't use it for design work itself. It's just not accurate enough. But in this course, just to get used to it, this is a great way of doing it. And again, it's very interesting. It gives you a little bit of info up here. Total distance, the elevation gained and lost. So that is how you would do it from Google Earth. Let's see. So there's another page here. And this is a nice one in that it shows a couple of important things. One, it's nice to have, well, having the A to B included so that we know which side of the line we're looking at. And we also want a 1-to-1 scale here. So what do I mean by that? Well, we want to make sure that our vertical and horizontal scale is the same. And that way, when we're looking at this, it's proportionate. So those trees, their height is proportionate to the width that we're looking at here. If our section line is, say we're on 500 acres and we want a section of the whole length of the property, say it's, a mile long or something. Well, you can imagine we'll have the terrain shown, but the trees and all the elements are going to be very, very small. They'll be almost, very hard to make out. So you want to keep that in mind with your section work. You don't want it too terribly long. Now, when in other professions, so a civil engineer, there's a good example. They would not necessarily do a 1-to-1 ratio here. It's often very, very different. They would be more accentuating the vertical and tightening up the horizontal. And that's to show the civil contractor as much detail as possible with grading a site, right? They're all about site grading. We're not interested in that here. We really just want to take a look at something and get a feel for how the land slopes and where those elements are within that slice. I don't know if we got another. That's more of an urban. No, it's very typical, just a little bit of slope. And then we have all these elements here.
Jamie, with that said, like my land is a square. So I mean the shortest amount is like 660 if you cross it. I don't know how I'm gonna get that on one page if it's a 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah, well, if you have a property that is quite large, you may not necessarily want to do a section over the whole length or width of it. Maybe you just want to do one area. Maybe you're having some challenges with some pasture, and you want to do a section just to see how that looks in terms of how water would flow through that area and the lay of the land. You don't necessarily have to go after a full length or width. It's really specific to You can see in the bottom here, this example, this person just did a partial, so which is totally fine. Here's another example. Now, this is quite lovely, right? The graphics here are very well done, but there is, I would have a little issue with it in that it's a perspective view. We're not a site cross-section view because the person's showing depth here. So, does that really matter? Well, probably not, right? It's doing the job. And this person's done a lovely job with that. But I would not personally be doing this. If we go back to the example I showed you, yes, you can sense some depth here, but it's not. So what happens is our scale all through this section is going to be accurate. Where if we go back to what we're looking at here, the scale is going to change. Is that important? I just thought I would point it out because I do occasionally see people trying to project depth here, and it's not necessary. And this would be very, very hard to do unless you're, really good with your graphics, which obviously this person is, and I think they are a landscape architect, so this would have been typically what they do.
It looks like a program that's generated.
Yeah, and I like this touch where they've got different bands of color showing the different areas here, so that's really nice. And then some pictures above. So it says a lot. If you take a look at a design sheet and you don't need a lot of explanation behind it, the person's done a wonderful job, right?
So question about the early succession. There's successions in the other ones. I don't know if this one has that.
No, this may have been an older from another, a version of the course that didn't require that.
So I understand the microclimates, but then succession stages.
Yeah.
How do you do that on a still like on the site? I don't understand how they're marking that.
Well, it's probably easier on this urban drawing. The front, so this front area has been listed as an early succession. So it would have had most of the disturbance, right? Which makes sense.
Oh, I see. I see. They're labeling what currently is existing on that soil and what's been done to it.
Yeah. So this is kind of a snapshot of the site as is, and they're just showing there's early, mid, late, and mid at the back here, and then early as you get to the very tail end of near the fencing here, which I believe is.
Jamie, can I ask you, like for instance, with pasture land, that does, it's just grasses, but really it could be late succession, right? Technically the soil. Or is that because it used to be woodland, or no, it's been disturbed, so it's back to mid.
Yeah, and it's constantly being disturbed, isn't it?
Oh, I see.
Through
Okay.
browsing or cutting
Jeez.
or
Yeah.
because and really it's the same with all annual veg. We're holding that soil in a certain spot. We
Yeah.
don't want to grow old growth trees in your bed full of kale. You want kale,
Right.
which requires different. And actually, funny enough, we've had that experience in our vegetable garden where we're no dig, no till. So we're just adding compost each year, and our soils actually were shifting too much fungal, and we're having trouble with brassicas. So it's interesting. So they needed to be disturbed a bit to support those sorts of crops.
But so pasture or annual vegetables, you would say that's early succession then?
Well, I would say it's mid, to be
Mid? Okay.
honest. Yeah, because if we look at some of the images here, yeah, this isn't really giving us, but you can tell what veggies are going to be happy, and your pasture, you're going to be in this kind of middle zone,
Okay.
right?
So then like a driveway, that would be early because it's completely this, or a road is early.
Yeah,
Nothing grows on it.
I wouldn't even, yeah, it would be early. I'm not sure I would apply a succession to a driveway, but you're right. It's early. You hope it stays that way if you've built a road. Um, but even with roadways, gravel road, look what happens to it if you just walk away.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes vegetated, and before you know it, you'll lose it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'm not sure I can find something here that's specific to. Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's safe to say that annual vegetables and pasture are sort of mid or mid late. Um, that's kind of how I would see them. So, that's one of the reasons why if you have where are we? There we are. If you have cleared an area for annual vegetables, why it's so easy to get going on a market garden, really. It's not that hard because you have to add some fungal component to be successful with it. But it's far different than clearing an area for, say, a food forest. That's going to require later succession organisms, and often new plantings like that will kind of sit and not really progress as much as you think they should, unless you are intentionally shifting the soils. You're either through when you planted that area or with your management, right? You're adding materials to boost fungal development and not disturbing your soil. So imagine even going through and hoeing an area is going to have an effect on that upper inch of material, which, that may not really be a big deal. But it would be, if you're trying to establish fungal dominance in an area, or at least have a 1-to-1 ratio, you'd be far better off mulching than, say, hoeing for weed management. Because when you're disturbing, you're going to be making it a little bit harder for your fungal organisms to get going. Yeah.
Question about your broccoli. Um, I've had similar issue with broccoli in my no dig, but I do disturb the top a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the broccoli head's not forming.
Oh, wow. Hmm. Which do you have you tried the purple sprouting, the ones that you plant in the summer and they overwinter and then you get a very early harvest?
No, I have not.
Yeah, you might have success with that. And honestly,
Purple
I
sprouting.
prefer those.
Okay.
They're beautiful. And yeah, you have to start them sort of June, July, and
Okay.
then plant them out, and then they just keep growing through the winter. unless you get a really hard winter. And but if you protect them with some remay, I think we talked about remay last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gives you a few degrees of protection, and that's often enough to pull it through. Like last winter, we lost some of our cauliflower that was overwintering and broccoli. Just from the wind, we had really cold Arctic outflow winds through our area just for a couple days, but that was enough to basically hit them all back. But that's a great variety, very, very easy. Doesn't
Okay.
get any insects. And then you have broccoli super early in the year. And we eat very seasonally, so we're almost into squash season. Getting there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you do two plantings of anything? Like early and then a late?
Well, we basically grow 95% of our own veg, so we have a succession all year round. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's when, my wife Angela does most of the cooking for dinners and stuff, and she just goes out to the garden, sees what's available, and that's what we're eating. Until
Wow.
this year. Of course, this year we've had a deer issue. So we have gone into the winter. All we have this winter is a couple of different types of squash. We probably have, 300 or 400 pounds of squash. And that's about it. We don't have
Wow.
anything leafy.
That's
We usually have piles of kale. So we'll have kale and squash and potatoes, but this year is different because we had a couple of females get into our property, female deer, and they had young, and they're still here. We have
oh
three
no.
three little ones running around, and the young deer will eat anything. They ate tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and yeah, everything gone.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a bit of a bummer, but
Yeah.
we're putting up another fence, so we won't have that problem next year.
Do a double fence.
Yeah, we have a perimeter fence we put in 28 years ago, but it's compromised in a few areas. And for us to get in and fix it, it would be a big disturbance to the forest and quite an expense for us. And so we know the bear is just going to do the same thing next. The bears come over in the spring and in the fall because we have apples and fruit trees here. So they love to come in and try and find stuff. So we know twice a year we have this issue anyways. And to electrify the fence against bear, you really need control of both sides of the fence. And ours is
Mm.
right on the property. So we just can't do that. So we're going to have a little inner fenced off area for all our edibles.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's not ideal, but I have, there's plants. One plant I grow, I love is Oca tuberosa. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No,
It's a Peruvian potato. It's quite something.
it grows in a cold climate.
Um, yeah, it's an unusual plant. This is what it looks like. It has a clover-like leaf,
Wow.
and it will flower. It doesn't necessarily flower. And then as soon as you hit the fall solstice, it starts forming tubers, and you leave those tubers. Um, you leave the plant alone until the last possible moment, which is just before a really deep cold spell.
Mm.
So we'll go out there and these are fairly shallow, and we'll dig them up, and they're like lemon potatoes, but they're not in the nightshade family, so they're better for you basically.
Mm.
And they're very easy to cook. So we slice them in half, and 10 or 15 minutes pan fry, they're done. They are fabulous, and they're They're hard to get where I live, but we have built up quite a stock over the years. So the deer were after these too, but I protected them. I got those tucked away for, let's see if they have, yeah, and this is kind of what they look like. There's a wide variety of color. They're very exotic looking.
Wow.
Yeah, they're beautiful. And they taste
From the
very good. They're very yummy. And the foliage is good too. You can pick the foliage and put it in salad if you want. Although I wouldn't do a lot of that because you don't want to take away from potential storage in the tuber. But they're very late. So, typically we don't harvest till December and it's, very cold and you're on your hands and knees digging, trying to pull these up. So it's not the most pleasant thing, but yeah, there's the foliage.
I probably wouldn't have to dig those up in Oregon because I don't think we'd get that deep of a freeze.
Yeah, what you might find is the rodents will find them and
Um,
yeah. I
make
had
lunch.
a friend who had a market garden close to where I live, and he never dug his up and got away with it, but not where I live. The rodents dial into it, and the bunnies, in the winter, they'll find them. So let's see if there's anything else interesting here. I've never eaten the stems. I just wouldn't do that because that's going to set back your tuber production.
Mm.
Let's see here. There you go. So 9A is ideal.
Wow.
They don't like it too dry. I'll say that. You have to irrigate
Okay.
them, but they are really well worth um,
Sounds
growing.
good.
And they do take a little bit of like easy to plant, easy to maintain. It's just a little trickier uh, to harvest because what you do, you want all of the life, um, all of the nutrient, not nutrient, but all the life in the stems and the leaf to go back down into those tubers. So you really want to wait until they've been hit by frost, but not too much, and slowly work their way back into the tubers. So the harvest is tricky, but the growing's easy.
When do you plant it?
That's the other thing, they start sprouting early. So, February or March, you'll notice your plants are starting, the window of eating them is small. So sort of February, we put them in the fridge to slow them, but then they'll get going around March. And March and April, we'll pot them on. So we'll put like two small tubers in a 4-inch pot and have those in the greenhouse and we'll get them going and then we'll plant them as is, or you can just plant the tubers direct. But you'll notice if the longer you wait, the sprouts get quite long and they can be a little bit problematic. So you don't want to wait too long.
So it's like a winter vegetable, but then you plant them in March and
Yeah,
harvest them all the way again, not until December.
and they're
So they're
tricky.
gone from March to December.
Yeah, I know. And they're beautiful and easy. Um, I found them relatively easy.
So you just
Uh,
have to have a place to put them that you just don't do anything else in that area.
right. And I have them right now. I have a 50-foot bed. So I have a market garden bed that's 30 inches wide and 50 feet long, full of oca. Yeah, it's going to be hopefully a good harvest, but you never know. I had to put shade cloth on them to keep the deer off of them. So I just put that link we're looking at, I just put it in the chat. So if you want to keep that, this is one of the better, it's just not a popular plant. Um, it's not really commercially viable in most areas, but I'd think in New Zealand they've had success with it. And of course, in the Andes, they just, it's from the Andes, and there's lots of info here on it though. So they're high up in the Andes where it's cooler, and there's a lot of different varieties. But yeah, they are beautiful to eat. They really are. They're just an incredible perennial crop. So
Good.
somehow we diverged into oca today, but yeah, they're exciting. It's a great perennial veg to go after.
I
Yeah.
like it. I like learning about new things to grow that are easy to grow.
Yeah. Well, another one that's very interesting that's listed here is Mashua. I believe that's how you pronounce it. That's a climbing. I don't know if they have. This site must have that. There we go.
Oh, wow.
No, where is that? There we go. Yeah, these are the tubers you get from this, and it's a climbing plant. It's
Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful plant. It's a tropiolum. Yeah, there you go. Tropiolum tuberosum. I did have it for a few years, and I was at that time I didn't realize it was edible. I had it just for its ornamental.
So the leaves and the stem, like the vine grows and grows and grows, but then you dig up the whole plant and eat the tuber.
Mm-hmm. Like this is the climber. I mean, look how beautiful that is, right?
Oh,
It's awesome. And this is
that's
from
amazing.
Kew Gardens, right? So it's grown as an ornamental, but it has these tubers that are edible. And I don't think these are and that's what it can do. It's just stunning, really. I quite like it. Um,
Oh,
they're
it's
not
really
quite
pretty.
as tasty as oca. That's what I've heard. I've not had the pleasure of eating them because we lost our crop and I haven't replaced it.
Mm.
So yeah, no, that's another. I quite like perennial vegetables. They're very nice. Artichoke, asparagus, all the obvious ones, but these are kind of unusual ones that you can find. So yeah, it's beautiful
So
plants.
you don't dig it all. You can just harvest as much as you want and just leave it to grow for next year.
Yeah, that's what we used to do. But if you get a really hard winter, you might lose them if you're not
Mm.
protecting, like mulching that area. If you mulched it with straw or something, yeah, you'd be doing fine. But finding these would be tricky. You'd probably only find a very small quantity of them, but they rapidly bulk up, like the oca. Like one oca tuber, you'll get 20 um, various
That's
sized
really
tubers.
good.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can bump up your quantities very, very quickly, and you get a wide variety of sizes. So we eat the large ones, and then we plant the small ones. And I know people that do the opposite. They'll eat the small ones and plant the large ones because they want bigger plants. And I don't know if that really gets them. It sounds like it should because you're starting with a bigger tuber. Yeah. So
Well,
yeah,
also genetically, it's like with garlic. If you do the larger garlics, you get larger garlics.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does make sense. It's just so much easier to cook the larger ones because you're cutting one in half, and so yeah, it's they are beautiful. Really like them. Also, I've got so many photos here. I know I have some. Let me just see if I can find one before we call it a day here. It's been a little while since we.
While you're looking, I went to Corvallis Saturday Market to try pawpaw for the first time on Saturday. Have either of you heard of the pawpaw?
You know, that's funny, Andre.
No.
I literally ate my first one yesterday because my neighbor,
Ah,
I know, I had never, it's like custardy with these large seeds.
Oh yeah.
It was a weird, it's very tropical.
It's a
yeah.
I've only
The ones
had
that I found.
like a taste.
Mhm. The ones I had were small, so I was a little disappointed that the market only had small ones because I want a bigger one if
It's a
I'm
big,
gonna have the effort of getting the seeds out.
no, this was a really big one and it had large seeds, so it's easy to eat. You literally could spoon it.
That's what I want to find. I want to find a large one and I want to start growing it. It does take a while to grow them, but I also heard that the leaves can be steeped for a pesticide.
Oh,
Wow. Hmm. Yeah, I purchased seed from somebody. I'm trying to remember who it was from. I grew my own from seed, and I had probably a dozen plants I babied along. Um, and unfortunately, I lost them all in one winter, or no, one growing season. They don't like to dry out.
Mm.
And I admittedly ignored them a little bit. And that didn't work out too well for them. Gosh, I don't.
Darn.
Oh, here we go. All right. Just share these photos quickly here and then I'll call it a day. So here's Oka harvest. I put them in oyster baskets. And you can see they're not huge, but
Mhm. Do you
yeah,
have to
yeah, that
peel
that's
them?
that's kind of pulling up a plant. Very very fulfilling harvest because you have all this color that you're cover under the ground. Let's see if I can get. Oh, there's all kinds of things. There we go. There's a breakfast of oca and egg.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
you don't cut them or anything. You just kind of maybe cut the length of them or you cut them in half.
yeah,
like fingerlings.
yeah, that's right. We just cut the long ones in half, and there's some smaller ones that are whole here,
Mhm.
and it's maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a little bit of oil and butter, and yeah. So
Nice.
yeah, and that's right before you know the snow.
Wow.
So it's just having to time it. Yeah. So they are beautiful. Hopefully we'll have some this year. Cool. All right. Well, that was fun.
Thank you.
Got to talk about all sorts of things today. Um, does anybody have any questions at all going into this next lesson here? Are we all good or
I have one more question. So for the
okay?
cross section, I'm going to focus on 200 yard, not 660, because then I can fit it on the page.
Yeah.
What, just like with the soil test, there were reasons why you picked the different sites.
Hmm.
What is it that is most important for this cross section? Is it different microclimates? Is it because I just want to check it out because I have a purpose? Like I want to see water drainage or something.
It could be that, sure.
Okay.
Could be you're
So it's
having a
not
little
like I need to have the barn on there. I mean, it could be really
no,
any section that I feel I want to
no.
learn a little bit more about. Okay.
Yeah. And it's not an easy exercise. Uh, Given that you have to be doing your own graphics, right? So,
Mhm.
but it does give you a very good feel of the lay of the land in that particular area. And that's, if we're doing this for a client, let's say, well, we traditionally do these 3D perspective views, but if we were to slice it, it would, for us, it would probably be in an area that we're looking at doing something.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Retaining it,
Yeah.
and that's often what we do for retaining. We want to know difference in elevation between, A and B.
Yeah.
How many steps, what kind of wall, how high. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's helpful.
Well,
Thank
that's,
you.
yeah, no problem. Well, it was great chatting with you both, and I hope you have a great week. And I hope Andrea has a slightly slower week so you can.
I got 2 kids that I gotta run
Oh,
around all over the place, so
yeah, that keeps you
that
hopping.
doesn't change right now.
Well, I hope you both have a great week and look forward to seeing your assignment next Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a
Okay.
good week. Bye.
Okay, you take
Bye.
care. Bye for now.